Presumably.
Presumably.
Yeah, presumably. I can't help with that one. That sounds. I have no idea how I.
Well, it's making a presumption, which meaning it's making a assumption based on really nothing. You're just kind of presupposing. God, I'm like saying the same thing over and over.
It's hard. It's hard to like describe these words.
But you're making an assumption just on something that you think you know. Right?
Yeah.
Is that a good
Yeah, that is. That's pretty. Yeah, because like you can presume something. So that's essentially the act of
being presumptuous.
Yeah, being presumptuous. Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to, you're emailing somebody about a job and they don't get back to you. Well, you may presume that they don't want to hire you, although you haven't talked to them. All you know of them is just this one email that was sent and got lost in the interweb.
Yeah, or like if you were applying to a college or something, you have bad grades. Presumably, you're not going to get it.
Yeah.
But you don't really know. You take some facts that you have and you just make a presumption about an action that you're going to take or something there. So like the statue is presumably not intended as a likeness of the Duke. I think grammatically is correct probably, but I don't know. I don't know if it would ever be used like that. Do you think?
I'm trying to deconstruct that sentence.
It's almost like a double negative.
That sentence almost makes it feel like to presume something, you couldn't get the knowledge if you wanted it. Like when you look at old artwork, you're presuming that it looks like who it's supposed to look like, but you'll never actually know. You'll never know if they got your email unless you get the job.
That's
right, and that may be the difference between assuming and presuming.
Huh. I kind of use assume and presume
Interchangeably.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I think I use assume a lot more than I use presume.
Presumably. But you wouldn't say assumably. That's not a word.
That's true. No, I don't think that is a word. That's weird. The statue's
But you make presumptions.
Not intended as a likeness of the Duke.
So you make presumptions means you make hypotheses? Is that same thing?
That's kind of
in a way, but maybe with less reason, less support for why.
Yeah, I feel like a hypothesis entails a lot of thought behind it. You make a hypothesis based on what you've taught yourself.
And I think a presumption can be a hypothesis. Like in the example I used, I presume that I'm not going to get into a school because of grades or something. That's a hypothesis that
based on 5 years of class.
Yeah. But does a hypothesis just mean that it's able to be tested versus a presumption you can't necessarily test it? It may be tested, but not necessarily.
I mean, to be presumptuous has a negative connotation.
Oh,
like if you call someone presumptuous, if you're standing with your friends and they're all talking about a party and you walk up like, I'm invited, you're being very presumptuous because you weren't invited.
Yeah,
but
you're assuming you were invited, being presumptuous. That's a really good example. I forgot about presumptuous.
Being presumptuous?
Yeah. I think presumptuous it might be the most used form of that.
Presumably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being presumptuous.
Yeah, like if you're at a bar and you're talking up a lady or a man, and you, what? And, you think you're onto something and maybe you make a move and try and kiss them. And
they're like, presumptuous.
I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Don't talk to me ever again. You're probably being presumptuous that they liked you back.
Presumably. Yeah, presumably you're being presumptuous. we don't know.
We're making the presumable assumption that you are being presumptuous.
In that situation.
By going for that kiss.
Based on the information that we have, we are guessing.
You never really used this word before in your conversation.
It feels pretty formal.
Yeah.
It feels like it's something you'd see in writing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I do say I presume, but I feel like I just say that just to kind of be a jackass.
To me, I really assumption, is more like familiar. Like this even I was thinking it's the same thing.
Well, yeah, because it's I think it's probably basically the same thing.
Presume, assume. What was the differences?
Because I would say like presume and assume are pretty much the same thing. It can be used interchangeably. But presumably would just be what you could say if you needed it in that context. Presumably, I thought this, or I assumed this, or I presumed this. But
I think
either way.
in conversation they're the same, but if you get into papers or mathematics, when you have an assumption, it's taken as a law for whatever math equation that you're doing. Like when you do geometry proofs and you get your list of assumptions in the beginning, you treat those like they're
based
facts.
off this, I can assume this, and based off this, I can.
Yeah, it's more logical maybe. Assume, but I mean, presumably it's probably about the same.
Like, but have you ever read this before? You didn't
Written?
use the conversation, but written? Yeah.
I think I've written this more than I've said it out loud.
Definitely.
I feel like I've said this more than I've written it.
I'm a vote for writing more than saying.
Why don't they ever write, presumably, this, and this?
I have in scientific papers when I'm trying to state a conclusion, presumably, based on everything I said before, you can presume, but I mean, you can use assume there also.
I guess it gets down to where you can't necessarily, like the age of the Earth, if you want to say the age of the Earth. We have all this.
Presumed to be.
Yeah, it's presumed to be 4.6 billion years.
But could you also
Yeah,
say
why
assume
don't
then?
you just use possibly, like maybe, like probably? Is that all?
It
the
sounds-
same?
You can say
better.
the same thing.
It
It's
sounds
like
better.
it's like a fancier way to say that.
Oh, okay.
It's just fancy.
That's, yeah.
Like,
Which is why it doesn't come up in conversation, because it doesn't come out naturally.
Again, yeah. It's like,
Unless you're
why say
pompous.
big word, less word, do fine. It's just, it
Less word, do fine. I took a minute, I was like, good point, gang.
And just based off this entire conversation, presumably, we're not the savants of English.
Presumably.
Presumably.
Presumably.